The Kennedy curse began with the family of Rose and Joseph P. Kennedy. But just a quick warning before I tell you more about it, this one is dark, like really dark. And if you can't handle sensitive subject matter at this point in time, that's okay. Feel free to scroll on. We'll catch you in the next one. Married in 1914, Joe and Rose would go on to have 9 children. Joseph Patrick Kennedy Jr., born on July 25th, 1915. John Jack Fitzgerald, born on May 29th, 1917. Rose Marie, born on September 13th, 1918. Kathleen Kick Agnes, born on February 20th, 1920. Eunice Mary, born on July 10th, 1921. Patricia Helen, born on May 6th, 1924. Robert Bobby Francis, born on November 20th, 1925. Jean Ann, born on February 20th, 1928. And finally, Edward Moore, known as Ted, born on February 22nd, 1932. Yes, Rose spent 17 years of her life bearing children. It's hard to pinpoint where the Kennedy curse started. Maybe it started with Rose Marie and those 2 hours she went undelivered, depriving her brain of oxygen. If you haven't watched the video before this one about Rose Marie, you definitely should. Or maybe it was 1941 when she underwent a lobotomy, which left her unable to care for herself, institutionalized for the rest of her life. Or maybe it started with the Kennedys' eldest son, Joe Jr. Joe Sr. spent the bulk of young Joe's life preparing him for political life with his sights set firmly on the White House. And it seemed like that would be the way that Joe's life would go. He attended Harvard and served as a delegate to the Democratic National Convention. But then on September 3rd, 1939, everything changed while the Kennedys were living in London. Joe, Kick, and Jack walked to Parliament to hear Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain declare war on Germany. Joe opted to leave Harvard before his final year of law school and enlisted in the U.S. Navy. After earning his wings in 1943, he was sent back to England. Throughout his time in the Navy, he would volunteer for the most dangerous missions instead of taking his earned leave. He was widely respected, with one of his squadron mates saying that Joe had everybody's unlimited admiration and respect for his courage, zeal, and willingness to undertake the most dangerous mission. During the summer of 1944, Joe Jr. volunteered for a secret bombing campaign called Operation Aphrodite. The mission was to fly a plane over Normandy, where a German rocket launching site was, arm the explosives on board the plane, and parachute out to safety. On the evening of August 12th, Joe and his co-pilot, Lieutenant Wilford John Willie, departed their air station in Norwich. As they found their target, Joe Jr. radioed in the code word "spade flush," but as the two ejected, the plane detonated early, taking the lives of both Joe Jr. and Wilford. Joe Jr. had just celebrated his 29th birthday. The year before Joe Jr. passed, Kick had returned to England, where she worked for the Red Cross. It was there that she rekindled her relationship with politician William Cavendish, Marquess of Hartington, eldest son of the 10th Duke of Devonshire. Now, the pair had been friends before the family had left London at the start of the war. Rose didn't approve of the relationship, as their marriage would break the laws of the Catholic Church, for Kick's future children with Billy would be raised in the Church of England. It's a no-no. No Protestants. But Kick ignored her mother and married him anyway, because the Kennedys will Kennedy. The pair were wed in a civil ceremony on May 6, 1944. Joe Jr. was the only family member who attended the ceremony. I mean, he was the only one in town, so. Rose didn't have much to fear, though, for Kick and Billy only had 4 months together before he went off to fight in France. He was killed by a German sniper in Belgium. 2 years later, Kick became romantically involved with the 8th Earl Fitzwilliam, whose name was also William Fitzwilliam. He would go on to seek a divorce from his first wife, Olive, in order to marry Kick. Their marriage was on the rocks, since that's how Olive liked her beverages. Rose also disapproved of that relationship. Knowing that Joe Sr. was going to be in Paris, Kick and William decided to seek his approval of the relationship. So off to Paris they went. On May 13th, 1948, the pair boarded a plane from Paris to the French Riviera. Unfortunately, they would never make it to their vacation destination, as the plane encountered a storm that would cause their plane to crash, killing all 4 people on board. Kick was laid to rest on the Cavendish family burial grounds in St. Peter's Churchyard, Edinburgh. She was only 28. With the death of Joe Jr., Joe Sr.'s political aspirations fell on his second eldest son, Jack. Jack had been injured in the South Pacific while fighting in World War II and was in the hospital healing his back injury when he found out about his brother's death. A close friend said that Jack had confided in them that the burden now fell on to him. And he took that burden all the way to the White House. John F. Kennedy was sworn in as the 35th President of the United States on January 20th, 1961. John's views were progressive for the time. He advocated for civil rights, gender equality, and implemented programming for those with disabilities. Now, John had married Jacqueline Lee Bouvier on September 12, 1953. Their first child, daughter Arabella, was born sleeping. in 1956. They had Caroline in 1957 and John Jr. in 1960. Son Patrick was born in August of 1963, but he passed away 2 days later from infant respiratory distress syndrome. During his 1,000 days in office, he created the Peace Corps, established the Civil Rights Act of 1964, set the foundation for the Apollo space program, helped the U.S. economy out of a recession, successfully navigated the Cuban Missile Crisis, established the Equal Pay Act of 1963 to help establish fairer wages for women, just to name a few of his accomplishments. But then on November 22, 1963, while beginning his campaign for re-election in Dallas, he was assassinated. John was laid to rest at Arlington National Cemetery. He was only 46 years old. And before you even start typing out Marilyn's name, I did a whole video series on her. It's on this playlist. Just go watch that. 5 years later, Bobby, now a U.S. Senator, set his own sights on the Oval Office. Bobby had idolized his older brothers and had followed in their footsteps, attending Harvard and enlisting in the U.S. Navy. He even served aboard the USS Joseph P. Kennedy Jr., a naval destroyer that had been named in honor of his eldest brother. He married Ethel Skakel in 1950, and together they had 11 children. Unfortunately, one of those children was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Bobby had helped Jack run for his own U.S. Senate seat as well as his presidential campaign. Once president, Jack appointed Bobby U.S. Attorney General. On March 16, 1968, Bobby announced his candidacy for president. But then, after winning the Democratic presidential primary in California, Bobby was shot while exiting the ballroom at the Ambassador Hotel in L.A. Bobby was rushed to the Good Samaritan Hospital, where he passed away on June 6, 1968, at the age of 42. He was laid to rest near his brother John at Arlington National Cemetery. Then, that's right, we're not done yet. Nowhere near. I hope you got yourself a little snickety snack. On the evening of July 18th, 1969, the Kennedys' youngest son, Ted, found himself in a bit of trouble. Much like his father and his brothers, he followed in their footsteps to Harvard, although he did get kicked out for 2 years after cheating on an exam. He also enlisted in the U.S. Army to try and repair his reputation after the whole cheating scandal. I mean, he did return to Harvard, and then he went to law school. Common Kennedy trajectory. In 1958, he married Joan Bennett, and together they had 3 children. One of them was Ted Jr. When Ted Jr. was 12, he was diagnosed with bone cancer and had to have his right leg amputated. In 1962, John encouraged Ted to run for the Senate seat that he was vacating. Ted ran, and he won. After JFK's death, Ted continued to work towards fulfilling his brother's legacy alongside Bobby. He even worked with Bobby on his campaign to abolish national immigration quotas to help build a more culturally diverse America. 2 years later, Ted survived a plane crash in Massachusetts that killed one of his aides and the pilot. He spent 5 months in the hospital recovering from his injuries. But on that evening in July, Ted had gone to Chappaquiddick Island off the coast of Massachusetts to attend a gathering that some of Bobby's staff had held. At some point in the evening between 11 and midnight, Ted had slipped away with 28-year-old Mary Jo Kopechne. He said he was driving her to her hotel, although she had left her room key and handbag behind. Ted had gotten lost in the dark and ended up turning down a dirt road. The car slipped off the road and plunged into a deep tidal channel. The car flipped over, cold water rushing in. Ted thought that it was the end. Even as cold water rushed into his lungs, he somehow made it to the surface. He dove back into the darkness looking for Mary Jo. When he was unable to recover her, he walked back to the party where he told his cousin and a friend what had happened. The men went back to the scene and took turns diving, looking for Mary Jo. They couldn't find her. They told Ted to go back to Martha's Vineyard and call the police, which is when things got even weirder. Ted opted to swim back to Martha's Vineyard. Once he got back to his hotel, instead of calling the police, he changed his clothes. He later said that he was paralyzed by shock. Staff at the hotel said that they received a complaint from Ted around 3 a.m. about noise from a nearby party, and then that morning he was seen chatting with fellow regatta competitors, the reason why he was at Martha's Vineyard. He seemed jovial, they said. He had called police by mid-morning, but by then a fisherman had already spotted the car and Mary Jo had been recovered. Ted found himself in front of a judge where he pled guilty to leaving the scene of an accident and was given a suspended 2-month sentence. While his dreams of the Oval Office were dashed, he retained his career as a senator by delivering a tearful TV address where he referenced the family curse. While Ted would go on to become a beloved senator who fought for marginalized communities, we should also remember Mary Jo. The diver who found her said that he believed that she had survived in an air pocket for around half an hour and that if police had been called immediately, she would have survived. Mary Jo was 28 when she passed away. She had been a campaign worker during Bobby's bid for president as a strategist. Her parents received a $141,000 settlement from the Kennedys' insurance company. That would be around $1.2 million today, although I'm sure it didn't do much to replace their only child. But we're still not done. Might want to go get a drink while you're at it. On January 23rd, 1974, Athalia Ponsell Lindsay's life was taken in her home. She had been in a relationship with Joe Jr. until his death. On April 25th, 1984, Bobby's son David passed away from a drug overdose in his Palm Beach hotel room. Then on December 31st, 1997, his other son Michael passed away in a skiing accident in Aspen. And then on July 16th, 1999, John's son, John F. Kennedy Jr., passed away in a plane crash along with his wife Caroline and her sister Lauren. There is a video on JFK Jr. and Caroline on this playlist. On September 16th, 2011, Ted's daughter Kara passed away from a heart attack while exercising in Washington, D.C. She was only 51. On May 16th, 2012, RFK Jr.'s wife Mary took her own life in her home. She was legally separated from Robert at the time after allegations came out that he had assaulted their babysitter, Eliza Cooney. Apparently, before her death, she had discovered his personal journal from 2001, which detailed his dalliances with 37 different women. Told you he was the worst. And that's not even all of it. In August of 2019, Bobby's granddaughter, Saoirse Kennedy Hill, accidentally overdosed at the Kennedy compound in Hyannis Port. And then on April 2nd, 2020, another granddaughter of Bobby's, Maeve, went missing with her 8-year-old son Gideon during a canoe trip in Chesapeake Bay. Maeve was found on April 6th, and Gideon was found 2 days later. Maeve was only 40 years old. Now, there are some other odd things sprinkled in there, but this is the bulk of it. I know statistically with a family as large as the Kennedys, you're bound to have more tragedy and tomfoolery than most, but boy oh boy do the Kennedys like to shoot for the moon. Which I guess is fitting because John did help establish the Apollo programs. Thanks so much for watching. A good day, may the cult be with you.